Hey Wildcats, today we're going to talk about roots. Now these aren't tree roots, these are actually number roots. First we're going to take a look at what is a square root. Make sure if I write it, you write it, and if you need to, make sure you pause the video as you follow along. As we take a look at square roots, what is a square root? A square root of a number is one of its two equal factors. A perfect square is a square of integers. For example, a 2, 1, 2 by 1, 2 would make a 2 by 2 square. However, it would be made up of 4 smaller squares, meaning the square root of 4 would be made up of a 2 by 2. We'll do another activity in a little bit to help us better understand what is a square root. Looking at another example, the square root of 36 is going to equal 6 because the exact same integer multiplied by itself to give me 36 is the number 6. 6 times 6 equals 36. Using that same mindset, we're going to try to figure out what is the square root of 25. If it helps you, you can start at the number 1. I know that 1 times 1 equals 1. I need a bigger number than that. 2 times 2 gives me 4. I still need a bigger number. If I say 4 times 4, that gives me 16. Now let's use the next one, which would be 5. 5 times 5 gives me 25. This tells me that my answer is 5 because 5 times 5 equals 25. That is a part of the perfect square. Now, what might help is if you write a list of these numbers multiplied by itself as you think this through. This next one's a little tricky. There's a negative sign out to the side. Knowing that it's negative on the outside tells me that my answer is going to be negative as well. The square root of 100. What number times itself can give me 100? Hopefully this one's pretty easy and you realize that 10 times 10 gives me 100. Because there's a negative on the outside, I brought it over, and I know that my square is going to be 10. The last one that we're going to look at for square roots is the square root of 49. Thinking about this, I know that it has to be higher than 6, so let me move to the next number, 7. 7 times 7 gives me 49. That means that the square root of 49 equals 7. Again, if you're confused or need extra help, feel free to rewatch this video or email your teacher if you have any questions. Let's move on to cube roots. If you think about it, squares only used 2 numbers to multiply. Think of it as a 2D shape. Cube roots remind me of a 3D shape. This helps me realize that I'm going to need 3 equal factors for a perfect cube that is a cube of integers. Also, knowing if something is a cube root, I'll see this cute little 3 right in front of the square, telling me that 3 numbers are used for this root. Our first example is the number 8. What 3 numbers that are the same multiplied by itself would give me the number 8? 2, because 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. Now let's take a look at this next one. It's a little tricky because we have a negative sign in front. I have negative 8. What number times itself 3 times would give me negative 8? Well, we know that positive 2 gave me positive 8. So multiplying it 3 times would be negative 2. This means that negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 equals negative 8. Let's try it again. I'm looking for the cube root of negative 64. I'm needing the same number multiplied 3 times to give me negative 64. I know that my number needs to be greater than 2. Let's look at 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. I need something a little bigger. Let's go to 4. 4 times 4 is 16. Times 4 is 64. However, this number is negative, so I know that my answer is going to be negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4 gives me negative 64. This next one seems a little tricky. I'm looking for the cube root of 343. Now it is a positive, so I know that my answer is also going to be positive. It has to be greater than 4. So I'm going to try 7. 7 times 7 is 49. Times 7 is 343. So my answer is 7. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to rewatch this part of the video as we move on. We're now going to talk about estimating square roots. To estimate a square root, you're going to determine which two perfect squares the number is in between and which one it's closest to. So, for example, I have the square root of 23. There isn't a perfect square for 23, but I know that 4 times 4 gives me 16. So it's between the square root of 16 and 5 times 5 gives me the square root of 25. So it's between the square root of 25. Which one is it actually closest to? I would say the square root of 23 is closest to the square root of 25. What is the square root of that, though? The square root of that lies between 4 and 5, closer to 5, though. Let's try another example. I have the square root of 7. I know that 2 times 2 gives me 4. That's the lowest one I can think of right now, so 2 times 2 gives me the square root of 4. And if I go up one more number, 3, 3 times 3 gives me the square root of 9. Looking at the number 7, it's pretty close to either one, but 7 is closer to the square root of 9. Meaning if I were to graph this, it's somewhere between 2 and 3, but closer to the number 3. Let's move on to estimating cube roots. When estimating cube roots, you're going to need to determine which two perfect cubes the number is between and which one it's actually closest to. Looking at the cube root of 83. Remember, your teacher's going to give you a paper that has the cube and square roots so that you can work on memorizing them. If I have the cube root of 83, that's not a number I recognize as being a perfect cube. However, I do know that if I say 4 times 4 times 4, that's going to give me that square root of 64. Whereas 5 times 5 times 5 gives me that perfect square root of 125, cube root, Which one is 83 closest to? Is it closest to 64 or is it closer to 125? Thinking about this, I believe that it's closer to 64. Meaning when I graph it, even though it's in between 4 and 5, it's closer to 4. Let's try one more example together. This one is a negative. Remember, that means my answer is also going to be negative when it is a cubed root. The cubed root of negative 60. I'm going to say I think that's close to the cube root of negative 27. To get negative 27, I said negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. The next one that comes to mind would be the number right after that, which would be negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4, that's going to give me the cube root of negative 64. Don't forget to put that little 3. Looking at this, which one is negative 60 closer to? Negative 64 or negative 27? Obviously, it's closer to negative 64, which means it's going to be closer to 4 on my number line, since 4 is the perfect cube root. Again, if you need any extra help, please feel free to reach out to your teacher, watch the video again, and try the practice assignments that follow. Have a great day.